Welcome, Brian O'Connor, to TAP.
Thank you very much. It's lovely to be here.
Good. You can see how excited I am, right? I'm like, yay. Because I'm a big fan of yours. You are the author of Awareness Games, Playing with Your Mind to Create Joy. So that's
Yes.
good. And you're also a theater director and other fun stuff. But the way that I know you is from your podcast you're co-hosting, called Awareness Explorers.
Right.
And I love that.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear it.
Yeah, it's absolutely a favorite one of mine. So thank you so much for doing that. And thank you for being here. We'll be talking about your hopefully one of your core themes, one of your special topics, uncaused happiness. Maybe you want to start off by saying something about what it is.
Sure. Well, most people think that happiness is something out there that they have to get and bring to them because they don't have it. And I used to think that too. But what I discovered is that happiness not only is within us and not out there, but it's our default state. It's just covered up by our incessant thinking about the past and the future and all of our strategies to try to change our experience. And when we drop all of those thoughts about the past and the future and we allow ourselves to just right now allow everything to be as it is, and then slightly shift our attention from the content of awareness to awareness itself. In other words, instead of what we're looking at, what's looking?
Mhm.
And that, which I call pure awareness, is a clear, allowing field that's like a clear mirror. It allows everything that appears to be like a mirror. If you put an orange and an apple in front of a mirror, it doesn't say, I don't like oranges. I'm not going to reflect you. I'm only going to reflect the apple. It allows everything to appear. And when we identify with that field of awareness, which is already allowing, then we realize that happiness is our nature and not something we need to find out there and bring in through accomplishments or relationships or acquisitions.
Hmm. Right. And then it's fun because you're calling it awareness games, but we also call it, we call something else mind games, right? When the mind is taking us into that understanding that you were just saying it's not the way it is, but it seems the way that sometime in the future, then I'll be happy and all of that. I have many questions for you. Let me start with this one. I'm training to become a psychotherapist, and I'm trained in the method called NAM. So that's another education. And in NAM, there is that combination of Western psychology and Eastern disciplines. And it's common to say, what do you notice? Ask the client, what do you notice about? Well, your experience, the many layers of your experience. And in the psychotherapy school that I'm at now, they ask, how do you feel? And I sense a difference in that. And I wonder how that's related to what you're saying, because I'm figuring that one thing is the content and the other thing is more awareness related. What do you think?
Well, a feeling is something that is in awareness. It's something that you can notice. And actually, emotions, I believe, are thoughts plus chemicals coursing through your body. And when you ask yourself, okay, what can I notice right now? There are many things you can notice. You can notice your body sensations. You can notice the sounds in the room. You can notice thoughts coming and going. And you can notice your feelings or your emotions. And all of these are appearances in awareness, in in you, in like when you were a little kid, everything appeared in you, and everything is appearing now in the same you. The I that has never changed. What has never changed since you were a little kid? We call it I, and I equate that with pure awareness. So I think it's great to start with the content of awareness and work your way back. What am I aware of right now? What's appearing? And then what's it appearing in? What is awareness, and what is the nature of that in which it appears? Is it temporary? Does it have borders? Is it infinite? Is it the same as what might be looking out through your eyes? And the only other thing I would add is, and I think that what you described as your psychological or psychotherapeutic technique is very good, that when that having a safe place with a therapist to have your feelings is very, very important, because we have all these strategies not to have our feelings. And when we can see them and allow them to come and go, then they do. They only stick around when we tighten up against them and think they shouldn't be here. But when we become more relaxed, more porous, and more free because we feel safe with the therapist, then we can allow the emotions to come and rise up and leave.
Mm. So you do actually care about the content of awareness, but you direct your awareness towards awareness.
Yes,
Okay.
awareness, aware of awareness.
Mm.
But starting with the content and work your way back, I think works really well.
Yeah, how would that work? If we were to say, how do we feel right now? Okay, well, I'm a little overexcited. I'm a little, maybe there's some anxiety there. Then how would you work your way back?
Well, ask yourself, where in my body do I feel this awareness?
Do I feel the awareness? Where in the body do
I
I
mean,
feel?
sorry, do I feel which emotion we're talking about? Anxiety?
Yeah, let's go with
Yeah.
that.
So let's go with that. Okay, where in my body do I feel this anxiety?
Mm.
Okay. So let's say I have a tightness in my chest or my belly. Okay. What is aware of that tightness or chest in my belly? And then you ask, what else is in awareness? Well, I can feel the weight of my body against the chair. I can feel a breeze on my skin. I hear sounds. Okay. Can I hear, can I notice the sounds and the body sensations at the same time? And when you ask a question like that, you're directing your attention around to awareness itself. So, is the field of awareness that notices my body sensations the same as that notices the sounds, and the same that notices the anxiety? I think it's the same. It's one awareness that allows it to be there. So the first thing is, so you're feeling an emotion, you're feeling anxious. Our knee-jerk reaction is to try and figure out how to make it go away. And it doesn't actually work. If instead we say, oh, give it a little love, allow it to be here, relax the strategies to make it go away, then it feels seen, it feels known, it feels heard. It doesn't stick around as long. At least that's my experience.
That sounds really good. It's because it's like expanding what's there, expanding what you are noticing. It's not.
Exactly. I have a little game in my book, Awareness Games, called Include, Include, Include.
Yeah.
And when you have an emotion that you don't like, you would say, well, what else is here? My body sensations, sounds. Well, I can look at the sun streaming in the window. And when you include more in awareness, that emotion you don't like becomes smaller in relation to everything else that's present.
Mm.
And you separate it a little bit from it. You sit back and you identify with the background. like words written on a whiteboard. If you only look at the black strokes of the letters, that's one thing. But what if you looked at the white space that it appears in,
Mm,
and then see if you could be that white space and identify it?
mm. No, that's really good. It's taking me into a meditative mode.
Oh, good.
Just thinking about it. And it is this going from the outer to the inner focus that you talk about.
Yes.
I wonder if you feel like sharing something about how your journey was from discovering that. And I guess there's also a journey from then I discovered it with my mind, and then I actually took the journey
Yeah, sure.
and integrated it.
Well, you know, I was very depressed and hostile and reclusive and pretty miserable and unhappy for quite a few many years. Um, and one time I got another round of depression, and I thought, oh, here it is again. I don't ever want to be depressed again. And so I was at work. I had a day job and I had a little downtime, and I typed into the search bar, how do people change? And it led me on a big quest, a big long quest of a whole bunch of things. And I tried everything from psychological methods to um, NLP to ritual magic to, whatever. And I came across a quote in a book about codependence that said, if you want to be psychologically healthy, you might consider developing a spiritual side. So I said, oh, let me look into that. And I looked into Buddhism and I looked into all sorts of spiritual things. And then I came across non-duality practices, sometimes called in Hinduism Advaita Vedanta, sometimes just called simply self-inquiry, which is the asking, who am I? In other words, what is this me that knows this experience? And instantly I felt, oh, wait a minute. This is working for me. If I shift my attention from the problem to that which notices it, it seems to ease it a little bit. But there was one missing element. I had to let go of this desire to fix myself, this idea that I am bad, I am wrong, I need fixing. I had to sort of allow the way I was, just allow myself to be right now exactly the way I was. And I found that that was the magic combination. Allowing everything, including myself and other people, just for now, just for 5 minutes, to be exactly as it is, and then turning my attention to the awareness in which it all appears. And I found that that combination revealed a happiness that I didn't know was there under the surface. So the irony of the whole story is I started by looking, how do people change? But the answer lay in not trying to change.
Yeah, okay, because I really wanna ask you that because when we Google your name, it also comes up this sentence, something like a guy who used to be depressed or something like that, right?
Yeah,
So
that's
it's in
me.
the bio. It's you. So
Yeah.
I ask you just from that vantage point, if there's a difference. I feel strongly there's a difference between wanting, desiring fixing yourself and desiring change.
What's the difference?
You don't think there's a difference?
Well, if you want to change something, that means there's something wrong with the way it is, and therefore you might want to fix it.
I mean, if you hadn't felt that urge to change, you wouldn't have looked it up and you wouldn't have.
Yes, you're absolutely right. And pain and suffering is one of the greatest impetuses on the spiritual search. You're right about that. You want to change. You're right. If I hadn't wanted to change, I wouldn't have found it. But then dropping the idea of changing anything, it is, I can't explain it. It's a mystery, but things do change then. when you allow things to be as they are. Also, I did have a therapist who, as I said before, totally gave me a safe space to have my emotions.
Oh, great.
And that helped. But I didn't think it went all the way until I discovered non-duality and awareness practices. That was added to that. That was the combination, I think, that helped. And for that, I needed teachers. I needed people to teach me how to do self-inquiry. And I found a bunch who used to come to New York and give what they call satsangs.
Wonderful. I mean, so there's change. There's something where you can sense I need more than this. And then there is the I need to fix myself because I'm all wrong, right? So I feel
Right.
there's a difference there.
Yeah. Yeah. I see the distinction now, and probably wouldn't find if you didn't seek.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's a paradox
Yeah.
because you don't find till you give up seeking,
Yeah.
but you have to seek and then give it up.
Yeah.
It's a mystery, but that seems to be the way it works.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. And it's very, I feel we're talking really from experience here, right? So
Yeah, yeah, and that's the only thing I can go by is
yeah,
what I've experienced. And it could be very different for other people.
sure. Yeah.
And also the words that are pointers to this are different for everybody. Like for me, who am I is great. Other people, who am I doesn't work. What is this me might work better. Or what knows my experience. Or what has never changed since I was a little kid that sees my experience. Or um, is what's looking out through my eyes the same as what's looking out through your eyes? There's a bunch of different pointers that people can use, and everyone has a different shaped lock, so they might need a different shaped key.
And that's something you specialize in, right? That's your book is filled with that different ways of
That's why I have a lot of them, hoping that one might work for you.
yeah. Uh, so okay, I just wanted to pick up on what you were saying there that you went through therapy sessions and then you needed that extra, I guess, meaningful component of spirituality. But did you continue the therapy and also in addition, I'm really asking about this field of when is it that we have a spiritual need and when is it that we can heal through therapy? Because I'm very curious about that.
Well, I did discover non-duality and stayed with my therapist for quite a while. I felt that I needed, his was the type of therapy which is very hands off, just sits there and waits for you to talk and gives you unconditional positive regard.
Mm.
And that's wonderfully healing. There's no question about that. But there's a tendency to think and think and think and talk about your problems and go into your story, which wasn't necessarily helpful. And in that mode of therapy, I think that was allowed to go on too long. And I wanted a teacher, not just a hands off person. I wanted someone to teach me how to turn my attention away from the story. Because the story is all about problems and it's all about past and future. And happiness is only now and in the present. And that's all that story about past and future. It can be helpful to trigger the emotion, to to help you notice that you're having an emotion, because a lot of people in therapy won't even admit that they're having an emotion. So the story can help you get started, but once you notice the feeling, you have to shift away from the verbal story, past and present, and relax and feel it in your body and And then that shift into that clear, allowing field. And, it's a shift in identity from what I call the little me to the big I. And the little me is the personality and the body. And the big I is, well, it's actually the universe. It's the universe looking out through billions of eyes simultaneously. It's all there is. It's consciousness itself, and everything that you can be aware of is in awareness and made of awareness, and it's universal.
This is really great. Really awesome. Thank you for that answer. I'm feeling it in particular when I'm in therapy, not as the therapist, but as the client. And I sense, oh man, now I've talked a lot about this identity and who am I anyway, right? This is just stuff that I remember, and so I can get existential questions around what's going on, what's actually
Mm-hmm.
healing. Because I do find therapy obviously very healing. As you
Mm-hmm.
say, emotions can be triggered, you were saying, and resolved. I would say like trauma could be resolved when you have that, when you allow that emotion. You were also talking about that right in the beginning, allowing the different emotions to be in the awareness. But then, yeah, I guess everyone has to feel for themselves when there's that point of uh, I cannot have my identity in what I'm talking about. I need to
Yes,
arrive at something other than this story.
yes, yes. And there's a classic um, technique from Hinduism called neti neti, which is not this, not this. And you ask, well, what am I? Am I my body? Maybe, but isn't there something that notices my body? What is that? Oh, well, maybe that's my thoughts. Yes, but isn't there something that notices my thoughts? What is that? Oh, that's my awareness. Okay. Is there something that notices your awareness? And you keep going back and back and back, because anything that you can give a name to is a concept and an appearance in awareness in something larger. And you keep going back and back until you run out of words, and you can't even describe that identity, that all-inclusive identity, with any words. You can just sense it, and you just fall back into it. Buddhists call it the half step back, just being the background in which everything appears.
Did you say the half step back?
The half step back.
Why only half?
I don't know. That's a good question. That's the term that they use, but it's like just, here's what you're involved in, what is appearing, and you say, oh, let's just step back a half a step and be the background in which it appears. It's probably just a poetic description, not to be taken literally. Like, why not a full step? Sure, take the full step. But I find that it takes actually two steps.
Mm.
First, you turn around and look at awareness itself. What is it that knows my experience, and what is its nature? Its nature being clear and choiceless and infinite. And then you turn around again and look from there at the world, identifying as awareness. And you look at your experience, and then you realize that all your experience is in awareness. There can be nothing outside of awareness. It's all, and you get a sense that it's all made of awareness, and it's all one awareness. There's a term called one taste, which is the sense that sounds, body sensations, thoughts, emotions, sights, smells are all in one awareness. They're all simultaneously known, and they are made of awareness. And you are not only that which notices them and is aware of them, but you are them itself. So it's very hard to describe in words. It's much easier to feel your way into it. When you start to lose the sense of separation between you and the world and realize that there's just one thing going on. It's energy rising and falling in temporary forms. And we're all connected. We're not separate from the air that we breathe. It's one system.
I'm nodding in agreement and in, from the way that you put it. And I'm also thinking of that how if I say modern therapies, they are on the shoulders of older therapies, of course,
Yeah.
but the popular ones now, um, if I can even talk about that, but just from my point of view, you do talk about arriving at the self, or being centered and looking from that point, or you can also call it adult consciousness, but other therapies also talk about the self with the big S self. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, maybe we are starting to see that that is the combination that we need to really heal. That we do need to find that place in us that's connected to everyone. And we
Mm-hmm. I think so, because I do think that identifying with or connecting with that universal awareness is healing by its very nature. But it heals when we step out of the way. When we sort of get healing is its nature, but the healing doesn't happen when we're trying to control what we feel, when we're trying to control what we experience, which we just sort of let go and maybe be the passenger to our experience instead of the driver for a little while. The healing starts to happen naturally. At least that's my opinion and experience. I don't know if it's true for physically healing, but I believe it's true for emotional healing.
For sure, that's mainly what I'm talking about. Yeah, and then it's all connected anyway. But yeah, I want to ask you about that because I often hear that you get in your own way, but wouldn't you say, as we've just talked about, that actually the real you does not get in your own way? So
Yeah,
what gets in your way is something that you've adapted, that as you called it strategies earlier.
yeah,
It's protection. It's not actually you.
that's right. That's not the real you. That's this sort of image of yourself that you've built up over the years in your mind.
Mhm.
And it's not the real you. It's really just thoughts, which are not really a thing at all, just an activity.
Mhm.
So that, you can call that selfing, the little me, the thoughts, the body, the personality, and then the big I, which is clear and open and allowing, and it's what all of that appears in.
Would you call the
So
oh, sorry.
I don't know. I think that there is value to having a healthy self-image. So I don't want to say that, throw that out of the window. I think that a healthy self-image, I mean, a healthy self-regard. I'd rather have people who feel healthy, as opposed to people who are miserable inside. But I think that you can go even further when you realize that any image of yourself that you can name or conceive is just another appearance in that universal awareness that is, I think, your true nature.
Really good addition. Yeah, really good addition. Because obviously we need that esteem and yeah, have a high self-esteem. We need that, and and so it's not, and that's what we're talking about here. I feel is really the combination of the spiritual view and the therapeutic lens, the psychological lens. So it's not either or; it's combining them.
Yeah, very good. My podcast partner, Jonathan Robinson, has a term. He calls it the two wing analogy. And one wing is self-improvement, healing, psychological healing, getting healthier in your relations with other people. And the other is the spiritual side, awareness practices, knowing your true nature as universal awareness. And if you only have one wing, the plane flies in circles.
Mm. Yeah.
That's his analogy. And I used to resist that analogy because I was a pure awareness guy,
Okay.
because in my own experience, the big shift happened when I stopped trying to fix myself.
Yeah.
But then I realized, you know, things did improve. Like I became more open with people. I became less critical of people. I became less defensive, less sarcastic, so there were psychological benefits. I just arrived at them through not trying to fix them, and then somehow they got fixed mysteriously.
Huh. It is the paradox of change for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay. Okay. I want to ask you about one of these things that our minds can do, the negative mind games. For example, I can feel pretty neurotic, and I think a lot of people can recognize this if we actually think, oh, I am my thoughts, or
yeah,
just judge ourselves from incessant thinking. Then it's easy to see, okay, I am going mad, am I not? And so one thing I think it's difficult to let go of is I want to do better next time, so I think a lot about what I just said, right? In a any given moment. Sometimes it doesn't even matter to other people
yeah,
at all. It's just me.
that's right.
And sometimes, obviously, it could also matter to other people. But either way, it's me haunting myself with thinking, right? Oh, I should have
Yeah.
said that a little bit differently. Maybe I. What would you say about a concrete example like that when the mind is actually trapping?
Yeah, that's like this little voice in your head or a little sub-personality that says you said a stupid thing, you shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
And its goal is to protect you from embarrassment or shame or criticism. And it was installed at a very early age when any criticism from a parent or other primary caregiver was a danger to your very existence, right? So this voice in your head that tells you you're a stupid idiot for saying something, what does it want to do? It wants to protect you. Why does it want to protect you? Because it loves you.
Mm.
So it's not necessarily an enemy, but it's no longer useful. It was installed when you didn't have the skills to do it. So you say, thank you. I thank you for wanting to protect me. I love you. You might not really be needed right now because it's not terribly helpful, but but thank you. Or you can just have one of my games, which is there goes Brian again doing that self-criticism thing. You know,
Mm.
both approaches can work. But to make it an enemy and demonize it doesn't work. And trying to get rid of it doesn't necessarily work. But being bigger than it helps.
But
And knowing and loving it.
and that answer, I feel, is really the perfect combination of. I mean, that's a very therapeutic approach, talking about how this is actually protecting you and how you can befriend it, love it, and
Yeah.
see the good intention behind it. But is it possible to completely let go of the past? I mean, it's always right there, isn't it? Like a shadow.
But it's not. The
Mhm.
past does not exist.
Yeah.
The past is only a thought a memory in your mind.
Mhm.
Only the present exists. So when you say the past exists, only memories and thoughts in your mind exist. The past doesn't really exist. Now, getting rid of memories and getting rid of thoughts usually means you're going to resist them and go to war against them, and that doesn't necessarily help either. So, allowing them, noticing them, and asking, like, well, who's it talking to? what notices these thoughts, these memories, and identifying with that which is already there, pure allowing awareness that's already allowing. And when you identify with that, they start to lose their punch. They start to lose their sting. And you identify with that, which is so, okay, fine. So I have memories, so big deal.
Okay. Right, because I was just thinking you would like maybe have like a brain injury if you were a completely new person every hour or something. But if you there was no recollection of everything, but then what you're
Sure,
saying now,
sure.
you actually say how you relate to what you remember is what I'm
You're
hearing.
absolutely right there. And a distinction should be made because people think that you should eliminate all thoughts. And there are different kinds of thoughts. There's practical thinking and practical memories. Like if I don't remember how to get on a subway or a train, then I'm not going to be very functional in the world. If I
And
have to get to the airport on time, I have to plan. I
yeah,
have to decide when to leave. These are practical things. The ones that aren't helpful are the story thoughts about what should and shouldn't be. Those are the things that are not so helpful. And there's a third category of thoughts which are helpful, which are insights that can come to you when you are relaxed and open in a meditative state and you get an insight. And those thoughts are great, they're fine. So not all thoughts are bad. Just
no,
the story about, just the idea that my happiness is contingent on something out there. Like I will not be happy unless I get this, or this shouldn't have happened and therefore I'm miserable. Let go of those stories. And then, then the thoughts that are practical are fine or insightful. They're
I
fine.
I want to get into your astrology, but first I really want to ask you that question about what you just said. So I sit there in therapy, and in the method that I mentioned, the NAM method, we always ask what most times we ask, what do you most want for yourself today out of our session together? And my answer is often something about I really just want to be happy even when they don't like me, right? I
Yeah,
want to be okay. I want to be just calm even when they don't show up for my
yeah.
class. Yeah, all of the stuff that I do, I want to be okay regardless. But then I do find myself struggling with that question: is it even possible? Because we have such a social nature. Is it possible for me to just be isolated, happy without any regard to other people's response to me?
It's a paradox. But let's say you are have an appointment with somebody and that person blows you off or is late or doesn't show up or something like that. And you have an emotional reaction to it of annoyance, right? Let's just use this as an example. That annoyance is happening in an awareness that's totally okay with you being annoyed. It is an allowing that's already there, that already allows. So the paradox is you can be happy even when you're sad or annoyed or anxious because that happiness is actually there already. You, the little me, doesn't have to make it happen. You just have to identify with what is already allowing everything to be as it is.
You can be happy even while you're sad.
Yeah, it's a paradox. It's crazy, but I've experienced it. I've been happy when I've been in pain. I've been happy when I've been anxious. I've been happy, because you don't, the identity is bigger and more inclusive. And so that little thing is just like, oh, there goes Brian again, getting annoyed at that thing. But who's the real me?
Yeah. Who's the real you? The one noticing that probably. Ah, yeah. Okay, it makes sense now that when you say that about your name, yeah. Be- because then naming you at a distance like that is naming the identity and who you take yourself to be, and it creates some distance, right?
Yes, absolutely. That's, yeah, very well put.
That's I feel when you talk that, and I hope listeners, our listeners do as well, that there's a place to go in, yeah, well, the awareness in the mind, and in me there's a place to go to get that, but to get that sense that you're talking about.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? It's like it's this is where I am right now, but I know the experience you're talking about, and I know that I can go there.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, do you want to talk about some astrology?
Sure.
Okay, so I have a few notes. Also, I sent you a questions. I sent you a question about what happened in, well, last year, 23,
Uh-huh.
because Pluto was right on your Mercury. And I've been, yeah, what was that? What do you think? What was there, some kind of a transformation around how it could be how you navigate life in general? So it's that's pretty big.
Well, that was a big change. Up until 2023, I had been to three foreign countries in my life, my entire 70 years of life up till now. And one of them was Canada, which doesn't really count. And in 2023, I went to eight different foreign countries,
Whoa. Wow.
including, you know, including six in Europe and two in Asia.
Oh
So
my.
I traveled a lot in two different trips, and I'm going to be traveling again this year. So that was a huge, that was huge for me, and
That,
it was marvelous and fun and eye-opening and terrific. So I don't know why all of a sudden, and the last time I had traveled to a foreign country was decades ago.
that's really good. Well, the symbolism is there because Pluto is the change component, transformation, and Mercury is also our mobility, our physical mobility. So
Makes
that
perfect
the
sense.
journey, yeah, and then how it affected you is obviously also transformational in that you probably, yeah, got to know a lot more.
That's right. That's right.
Wow. Okay. And then I've been thinking about, because you talk about this well of joy within, the well of
Mhm.
joy within, discovered through experimentation. So that's the thing in your book where you have different experimentations we can do. And I think that belongs to your moon in Gemini. It's quite objective, it's logic, even though it is the moon there. So the moon is how we filter life in an emotional way, what we pick up emotionally. And that, when it's in Gemini, it's related to asking, noticing the immediate, the moment, also naming things. We've been talking a little bit about that, naming things, yet also knowing that names are just concepts and it's not defining what it actually is. It's ideas in the mind. And yeah, because Gemini is so related to the mind, it likes games. It likes to be entertained as well. It likes complexity and it also likes to do many things at once. So it's good with games.
Mhm.
And that's why a Gemini trap, a downside of Gemini, is something you could fall into at a lower stage, obviously, than you are, but is something has to do with constant chatter, like either just speaking a lot or thinking a lot, just automatic. But at a higher level, this Gemini signature is the capacity to not be pulled into emotions. I really like that.
Mhm.
It's the capacity to not be pulled into emotions because it has this neutral flavor. And because it is about the experience itself rather than making meaning of it, because that would be in Sagittarius, the opposite. So, and when I say this, it's not that it's just easy for you or anything, because you also, I mean, it's a capacity, right? It's there, but it is in combination with what you have in your chart overall, and you also have this huge Leo signature that is very personal. So the moon in Gemini is good at like letting hit slide. Uh, but you have, of course, other things in your chart to make it um, to challenge that, where you do feel strongly about things.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Do you want to say something? Because it's a little long what I've written down for you.
Well, it all really rings true. And I do have a lot of feelings. So none of this that I talked about has made anything go away.
Mm.
In other words, the thoughts, the mind chatter, the emotions, even the neuroses. For
Okay.
instance, I still have fears. I have an irrational fear of bureaucracy. So I don't like calling insurance companies on the phone, things like that, right? This doesn't make them go away. It makes them not matter that they're there. It helps me to just totally be okay. Okay, so big deal. So I have a feeling. So I get annoyed. So big deal. I'm it's the little me, it's Brian that's Brian's personality that does that. And it's habitual. And but I also have very deep feelings of positive feelings of love and care and attachment. And you know, I I I I think love is the secret of the universe, the most powerful force in the universe. And I feel it deeply. I feel it more deeply now than I ever did, because there seems to be less in the way. If that makes sense.
There's less in the way of love now.
Yeah, because I can focus on, because I'm not trying to change other people either.
Mm.
Other people, I seem to be more accepting of exactly the way they are now. And that really helps with love, because you're not putting conditions. You're not saying, I will like you if you're that way. You're saying, oh, they're that way. How interesting. And then love comes up by itself automatically.
That is a good one. That's a good component to happiness, I think, to not struggle with changing other people. Yeah. Do you want me to say something about your Leo signature?
I'm not sure. I mean, sure, feel free. I'm not as well versed in what a Leo signature is as you
Oh,
are, so but I'm happy to hear about it.
I'll tell you about it. Um, because you are an Aquarius. You're born
Yes.
sun sign of Aquarius. So the Leo signature is really huge because it's related to your South Node and it's at the top of your chart. So that's why I really notice it. It's about the heart. It's incredibly important for someone with the signature to take care of his heart health in practical terms. And it's related to the male principle of leading with courage. And but you also not but and you have this big Pisces signature, which is the whole spiritual realm, and it's really soft and compassionate. So it's blended with that. It's not just a leader who's coming with force. It is combined with that soft, compassionate, and more imaginative and creative. um, yeah, way of being, and from an unknown source. I feel like pointing that out with the Pisces signature you have is there's that unknown, um, and so when you create something, because this is the great creator, the Leo is the great creator, then you don't know exactly what it will become, and that's really a good thing. And it's really fun. It's your chat looks like a lot of fun. uh, it could be possibly, of course it always depends on how we live it out. But the Leo signature is a biological need to create. So it could also be around being a parent because it is so. children-centered, but it can be creative in many ways. It's related to passion and purpose, and it's in that symbol of succession. Like you create something that other people are gonna love, and then they're gonna spread that themselves.
Mhm.
So, yeah, what do you say about that?
Well, that's absolutely true. Creativity has been always one of the most important things in my life. And I've always been attracted to the arts. I used to paint and draw, and then I got into theater and directing, and then I got into cabaret and creating musical comedy cabaret shows. And I guess it was 3 or 4 years ago I did the last one. I did a solo musical comedy cabaret show, and there was just a huge amount of creativity that goes into that. And even creating the graphics for the podcast,
Yeah.
that's creativity. I love that. I love just finding the right colors to match the right picture and stuff like that. That's what I love. But interestingly, that you say about Pisces and the unknown source, after I have a big spurt of creativity, like for instance, creating the podcast or creating that cabaret show, after it's over, I have this overwhelming feeling that I didn't do it.
Ah,
Who did that? How did that happen? How did that come apart? While I was doing it, it felt like me, but after it was over, it felt like it came through me from an unknown source. And it's an odd, mysterious feeling. So I'm comfortable with mystery.
yeah. Yes, yeah. You have to be. You have to be comfortable with it. That because then that's how it's gonna run through you. That yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
But you somehow have good genes for creating in that way. Wow, that's really good. So we are at the top of the hour here. Do do you have anything? You must have. You cannot say no to this question. You must end on. Let me ask you in another way. What do you feel like sharing here in the end around what is closest to your heart?
Unconditional love is very, very powerful. And the conditions that we place on our experience in order to be happy are the veils to happiness itself. And one other thing, since we've been talking about therapy and psychology, is that I have a theory about depression. And it's only from my experience, and I'm no expert, but my theory is this, that depression is not a separate emotion. It's a strategy we employ to prevent ourselves from having emotions that we don't want. So we clamp down, we depress, we tighten up, we guard ourselves against having the emotion, and then our lives become flat. And when we gradually ease up on those strategies to prevent emotions and allow them to be happen, allow them to be there and occur and become a little more porous, they tend to come and they go, and the deep emotions that have been built up inside start to come out and leave. But it doesn't all happen right away, and sometimes that can seem to be a painful process of the emotions coming up and being released. But the more we allow it and the more we approach it with love, the fewer strategies we have against our emotion, and then the less depression and more liveliness we can feel. We can appreciate life.
Really, really good. A Leo word is celebrate life.
Yes,
Right.
absolutely.
Yeah. Uh,
Yeah, and so it's not becoming distant, it's not becoming transcendent. I'm above, the day to day. No, I appreciate other people, appreciate creativity, appreciate the beauty of the world. And yeah.
It's the two wings, right? From Jonathan. So he was also a little bit with us today because of that analogy. Thank you so much, Brian Tom O'Connor. I will link to you, and certainly I will link to Awareness Explorers. Really recommend that podcast. You speak to a lot of people I don't know, and I really like that.
Yeah, some are famous, some are not that well known, and I'm very grateful that I can help give them a voice to
Yeah,
be heard,
me too.
just like you do.
Yeah, yeah, right,
We're very kindred spirits in that way.
right. Yeah, it is a passion. It is a passion
Yeah.
to get started. Yeah, true. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're so welcome. It is a joy to talk to you, and I love your questions. They were insightful and fun.
Good.